is Ramona Jackson. I am a product manager at Rise 8, and I will be the facilitator for today's Platform as a Service panel. And we have a couple of amazing panelists here today who I will introduce before we dig right in. So first up, we have Ben Hale here, who needs no introduction, as we know of from our last speaker. But I want to start off with a little fun fact about each of our panelists and then give what they do today. So I found out that he bikes in the mountains, the Italian Dolomites.
The Dolomites, yeah, love them.
Which I feel like is more important than his decade of experience with Java. But Ben Hale is the technical lead for the Tanzu application platform at VMware, has founded several cloud-native K8 services and database connectivity projects, and I'm excited to hear what he has to say today about Platform as a Service.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks. Next up, we have Anthony Butt, who is the principal engineer at Second Front Systems. Formerly was the director of technology and innovation at CS Engineer and was customer zero for Platform One. So very interested to see what you have to say as a customer of a platform, how you were served. So welcome to the panel.
Thank you.
Cool.
Glad to be here.
And then last but certainly not least, my colleague Eric Bram, who is the senior DevOps engineer at Rise 8. He makes candles, guys, which I think is very important. And he also has a love of learning about construction trades, but has recently helped to build out an EKS-based platform for the VA. And I think he will bring fresh perspective to this panel on Platform as a Service. So we've heard a lot about IaaS, we've heard a lot about platforms and how platforms serve. So I want this panel to be focused on almost an evaluation of if they're actually serving their customers who are developers and helping them to be productive and helping them to manage their applications and that rich data that those applications store. So we're going to start off with a little evaluation. So first question, do you feel like platforms are actually serving?
Do I think platforms are actually serving? Yeah, absolutely. To what level? I don't know. I think that when people think of platforms, they have very different ideas of what that means. And I think people who think of platforms as a service, like PaaS kind of things, have even stranger ideas about what they are. One of the big tensions I observe is that when you tell people, I can make your job easier by putting you in a slightly smaller box, they sort of reflexively say, I want out of that box. I want a bigger platform. I want a more generalized platform. And it leads to, I think, some of what Cornelia kind of described, where there's this mismatch between what you think you're doing or where the interface is, how much control you demand versus how much value you actually get out of it. And so I think some platforms can be really, really useful, especially for teams who embrace that idea that the platform is making it easier for me to do the things that really drive value. Other platforms, maybe not so much. Other teams, maybe not so much.
Okay. What would you say to that, Anthony?
Oh, man. I agree with Ben on a lot of things he said there. PaaS is probably the most passionate thing that anybody ever talks about, especially in our realm. I do believe every application developer, anybody developing software, they always have the most neediest customers, but I believe people that are developing PaaSes absolutely have the neediest customers because you guys have a technological understanding that most people don't have. Therefore, you come to us with ideas of abstraction and all these things, and it's really hard to pick the ones that are most meaningful or are going to deliver the most value. Some are going to most miss sometimes. People get unhappy, and there's just a lot of passion in the environment. So it's really a loaded question when you say whether we're really delivering value to folks. And to Brian's comment earlier, you need to have opinions when you're building PaaSes, especially in the government. And some are bad, some are good. It all washes out. It's always individualistic when you go to these different software factories.
Yeah, I mean, I'd just like to add on to the passion. I think for the most part, we get really excited about making platforms, and that can be a great benefit, but also a detriment. I think sometimes we like to build out features or different aspects of a platform that might or might not be useful, either now or in the future, and I think that's where just the user-centered design is really important. We need to be focusing on what we need in the short term, medium term, and long term. And I think when you're talking about serving, it is important to discuss the time frame that you need to be serving it in, because as a platform developer, I'm going to want to just go full on and do all the things as quickly as I can, and that might not be the proper order. So I think yes, we are doing it, we are serving, but we need to be making sure that we're doing it with the user focus in mind to achieve the initial outcomes that we want, and then also predict what we're going to need in the future.
Definitely. And you mentioned something there, Eric, about the build out or the engineering of a platform, but now the platform's there, it's ready to be used. Should the service of that platform be managed by the same people who built it, or should it be managed by someone else, given the domain that we're in, being the government space, and the expertise of the individuals, whether they're organic or contracted?
So I think it's very clear in my mind that it absolutely has to be the builders of the platform. One of the key things for me is like this rise of a term that's relatively recent called platform ops, right? And platform ops is effectively equivalent to the platform for DevOps, right? Like to be a platform operator these days, there is a reasonable expectation that you code, that you actually built this thing. Maybe you're gluing together pieces and parts from different vendors and things like that, but the ultimate outcome, the ultimate product that you give to those customers is yours. It's not somebody else's. And for that reason, like, you should carry the pager for it. I'm a firm believer. One of the things I love about DevOps the most is you'll only be woken up in the middle of the night with a pager a couple of times before you make a better product. Same thing for platforms.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
What would you say to that, Anthony?
Oh, same. Definitely echo that 100%. Hit the nail on the head there. The platform is ultimately a piece of code, right? It's an application that we serve to a different set of customers, right? So you have to own it, right? As in anything, in any environment where you're serving customers, you must own your product. So totally 100% there with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with the owning aspect. I don't necessarily know if I agree with the building aspect. I think if you can pair properly, you might be able to take on that context and have the same ownership as a builder. But at the same time, I think it's really hard to decouple not only the technology, but the actual decision-making process behind that. A lot of technical decisions that kind of pave the way for how the product is designed. It's hard to decouple that from the builder to the maintainer. And I think that's just one of the challenges as a platform team that we need to address. But I do agree that those that can actually build the platform are currently the ones best disposed right now to maintain it as well.
Okay.
But I do think that we can solve some of that with pairing and sharing a lot of that context as quickly as possible.
Okay. You speak about pairing and enablement, and I know that that's been a big topic today, as there's a lot of education that's available to government and contractor resources that are participating in building and then servicing these platforms. What do you feel like is the current state of the talent from a platform operations standpoint, and then what needs to be done to get it to the next phase?
This is a really good and a very loaded question. Like sitting here today, almost all of the speakers mentioned, we don't have talent and these kinds of things. And like, I'm here to tell you, I'm a VMware employee. We make great software. We also have a range of talent, right? Not everybody is, sort of the mythical 10x developer. I certainly am not. And so I think it's really important to, when you're building these kinds of platforms, to be very humane in them, right? To realize that even if you did have nothing but 10x developers, you'd still want to make something that was easy to maintain, easy to operate, because it frees them up to go actually deliver business value. Same thing is true in government as well.
Yeah, I'd lean on principles here, right? Robert Martin, principles, clean code. We want to keep things as simple as possible and as tiny as possible for as long as possible without lots of dependencies, right? So, and speaking specifically to the talent management thing, I mean, you're looking at an airman, right? 6 years ago, in 2012 is when I joined the Air Force, did my little first assignment, and then I selectively applied to JSOC and went that route. And I had the opportunity to fast follow Kessel Run and found the gap, which is JSOC's software factory. And it was just a very small group of people writing code and developing platforms at night, right, with the support of VMware, Pivotal Labs, et cetera. And here I am sitting on this panel, right? So the talent can be grown. I'm a big proponent of that. I am hopefully an example of that as well, right? So you don't need to know everything. You just need to check your ego at the door, right? And you don't know everything, just ask questions and Google. That's pretty much what everybody does, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to the talent or lack thereof. I mean, I see a room full of like brilliant people, and everyone I've been around has been very competent. To me, there might or might not be a lack of talent around, but the biggest concern I have, honestly, is the lack of understanding and leadership when it comes to tech. I mean, to me, I feel like that's a really big risk. I see a lot of conversations. You know, we talk a lot at Rise 8 about like meeting people at their level and being able to have those conversations. And I think that I get a little bit nervous when I see a lot of government leaders that can't have those conversations. You know, the onus can be on us as tech and contractors to bring that conversation to them, but I think the context gets lost a little bit if we have to dumb things down. And you know, I love to see here, like the contract I'm currently on, we have representatives from the government here at this conference, like, and that just shows to me that they're invested, they know the tech, and they're involved in it. And I just would love to see more of that from leadership. But that's where I see the biggest gap in the actual tech field in government.
That makes sense. So the leaders that you speak about are usually the ones involved in the build versus buy decisions that need to be made when you talk about IaaS and PaaS. For those leaders who have the right stuff, the ones that you have had the good fortune of working with, I'm sure those decisions they make in concert and collaboration with you. But for those leaders who might not have the expertise or experience, what can we do to enable them and to level them up so that they make the best decisions for their programs and their people?
Wow, that's a really good question. Very unique. Haven't gotten that one before. In the end, it's education, right? Really teaching them like what value you want to determine whether you build or buy. Part of that is you really need to deeply understand what value you're bringing, right? Like we often go into, say, banks or something like that on the commercial side and say, are you really in the business of building a software platform, right? I thought you were a bank or a car company or what have you. And then you get into, aren't you a military, right? And so really understanding that even though you look around and you see things that can't get beyond 80% or 90% of your requirements, means maybe you relax those requirements. You go to there because the amount of money, the amount of time, the amount of effort and education you have to do isn't going to be worth the return on investment. And like really guiding, you know, these decision makers through that process to more deeply understand their value proposition.
Makes sense.
Oh man, I have such strong opinions on this, and I could talk for hours about this.
That's the hot takes, Anthony.
Yeah, this specific build or buy problem. I've been in both situations many times, especially working for the government. And this problem still exists today, right? For all of these, I guess, line like the Sentinel systems, which is new ICBM, they're in this problem right now, right? Do I invest in a platform that exists already, or do I build my own because my thing is unique, right? That's the ultimate question. And I've been on both sides of that. You know, we used a thing and we bought something, didn't work out for us, crashed overnight. And we had to build something very, very quickly, right? So I understand the differences of both, but it's like, how do you share that context with technical leaders? That's incredibly hard, right? If you don't experience it, sometimes like you can't learn all the ins and outs and why that's hard, right? And we can sit up here all day and say, oh, do you really want to buy the thing or do you really want to build the thing? Good pros and cons of both, but unless you're in the situation, you know, speaking back to Adam's point, like it's all about the context in which you're trying to apply a PaaS to, and I believe that wholeheartedly. Like it is domain specific, especially in the government. Things are different for different organizations. Having worked at a few now, a few different software factories, the context is always its own unique thing at these different organizations, and that's why you get so much. There's so much conflict between software factories today. especially around PaaS as an example, right? So, and this is a classic build or buy problem, ultimately, right? So, pretty passionate. I don't want to monopolize the time here for that, but I could talk for hours about that.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking specifically build and buy, I mean, I think I really agree with you. It's kind of a cop-out to say it depends, but I really think it does. You know, I like to think of it as like each of our organizations has a very limited resource, be it like time, money, personnel, and I think each of them has a specific domain that we need to devote the time to. And you know, you could look at building your own tools, buying tools, open source tools. Really, like what combination of those can get you to the outcome you want, I think is the most important question to ask. I would say in general, if you're new to it, it's probably easier to be buying a platform and building like custom solutions to that platform, just because in general the platform is agnostic enough that will get you out there. The added benefit of that is if you do decide later that it's not meeting your needs, like you said, you can develop in parallel the platform that will go along with that, while the greatest part being that you can be still shipping to prod while you're developing a new platform instead of being blocked from any kind of releases until you finally reach that MVP state of the platform. I think that's probably the simplest way to go, but obviously it really depends on the environment that you're in.
Yeah, as a quick follow-up, like, don't feel alone. Every month, probably, we have to make this same call. It's less build buy and more versus build on OSS or something like that. And I think one of the big things that has helped us be able to make a repeatedly good decision there is have a framework before you're presented with it. Understand the way you're going to think about the problem so that you can then slot in these contextual decisions and really understand, have a good system for how you make that call.
You mentioned something there, Eric, about being able to be fast about like getting to prod, and we're here in the service of the developers and the applications that they're building with our platforms that are serving. What are other things other than buying first and then adding customizations and then on the side building out something that's more robust or customizable for your program? What are other things that we can do to provide faster and more reliable and better quality service as a platform to our developer community?
I think the number one thing is to realize that you as a platform operator, your platform is a product. And in a thing that I think would surprise a great many operations teams, you probably need to have PMs on staff there, right? Interviewing these people who are using them, seeing what needs you're meeting, seeing what needs you aren't meeting, and absolutely like either you building that piece. Like I think the build some stuff, buy some stuff, put it together in a cohesive platform is a good story for a lot of customers, both commercial and government. But to do that, it means you really actually have to treat it as a product in the first place that you're building.
Yeah, for me, I think it's to Angel's point earlier about just having good examples and good documentation. I used to buy into the whole forgo documentation and the effort to like get to production. There are a number of pitfalls in that thinking, especially within the government, especially when you think about turnover and like, you know, there are organizations that I've left and I've just taken a lot of organizational context with me, right? Especially about platform stuff. And it's just like, after I've left the organization, now I have to, either they reach out to me and they know me personally and they text them, you know, I try to keep sharing that information no matter how much turnover you do, you'll never share everything. So I lean pretty heavily now towards like, let's do a little bit more of documentation on the side to support that. But at the same time, well-known examples on like how to get somebody started on your platform is the biggest thing that anybody can. Building a new one today, please provide that. Like, how do I go from nothing to something is really, really important. Because if you don't have that, then developers end up spinning their wheels thinking like, oh, how do I get to prod? And it's way too ambiguous currently with some of the things that are out there that people are using. It's too hard, right? So to really make it as easy as possible, and I think either a simple conversation in a meeting or documentation is also really great because we're taxed. We have limited time to do things, both build features and meet with customers at the same time. I can't handle, as a platform, right, we're servicing hundreds of app teams, right? So with that comes I don't have enough time in the day to sit with customers to walk them through that journey. So what do? Create documentation. So I would tackle that problem.
Yeah, I think these guys said it great. I think, Ben, one of the things you said really kind of stuck with me when you said that think of it as a product. One of the things I think we fail in the platform world a lot, we've seen UX kind of transition into application development, but I don't really know if it's transitioned in DevOps and platform work as much, and I'd definitely like to see that more. One of the things that kind of stands out to me when you talk about speeding up the platform development is understanding our users, honestly. I don't know if we do a great job at that, and I think one of the interesting things is when we talk about software development, we can't really make a lot of assumptions about the competence level of our end users, but I do think that could afford us some benefits in the platform world because a lot of our end users are actually the software developers, and so we can consider some kind of speed ups in their understanding of what we're offering. In addition to the fact that a lot of times software developers want to be involved in the platform process, and so we might be, for a concrete example, planning on not only delivering the platform, but delivering like the CI/CD pipelines and maybe build and test environments and stuff like that to the development team, when in reality, they want to be the ones actually building that out or working with us and will be willing to contribute some of that effort. So I think that could afford some extra speed to get our product out there if we know our users, communicate with them, and find out what their actual needs are.
That's a great point. So we're talking to our users, the developers. What's the one question that you think platform operators should ask developers that they're not asking? And then what's the one question that developers aren't asking platform operators?
So I think the first one is what aren't we asking our developers? I think it's more a question of and you could say, hey, what is this feature you want or something like that. But I think perhaps a more meta question is, how easy is it for you to get started without us, right? Have we provided enough information for you to onboard without needing a human being internally in our own software development process? I would say we're kind of failing at this at the moment. A lot of people need to talk to a lot of people. I look at, sort of the Amazon way where there's, well-built documentation, clearly defined APIs. It means that teams can just start. You get to scale because there are no bottlenecks that way. And so I think really understanding whether your customer, not whether you think you've written good docs, but whether your customer thinks so. On the other end, the question from sort of application developers back to the platform, I don't have a specific question other than maybe can you write better documentation? But I think application developers should not be shy about asking for more features, right? For more supported languages, for more of these well-known patterns. Cornelia talked about a lot of blue-green deployment or retry behavior, circuit breaker behavior in the application layer. What I wanted the team to actually do is ask that for every single language. How do we get that built into a platform so I don't have to be a Java developer to get that same kind of functionality? And so I think application teams should absolutely be more aggressive about asking for those kind of features on the platforms they run on.
Absolutely.
Yeah. For me, for the questions that platform teams should be asking, I like to encourage really diverse thought. So the magic wand question, hopefully everybody here is familiar with the magic wand question. I just want to hear unique ideas for what the platform team should do or might want to do, and that'll uncover kind of to Ben's point, what aren't we doing well, right? They'll bring those things will come out as well in the magic wand question. Just generally love that question. I ask that to all my app teams, just to understand what they might want out of their platform. I just tease out that features thing, and then to the point. On the flip side, it's the same thing. You expect more, right, from your platform, especially in the government. I can't harp on this enough. Unfortunately, we set a really low bar in the government. Not in every government space. I come from the black world, so to speak, of the government, where resources aren't really limited, and we don't have that methodology where we expect a lot. In fact, right, and the rest of the DoD could use a healthy dose of that sometimes. You should expect more, right? I think that's incredibly healthy. And those would be my two questions that I would definitely ask, customers ask.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know if I have any questions. I think one of the biggest breakdowns that I've seen the problem, but I don't know if I have the solution for yet, is just the lack of understanding of what's possible and what's available between what the platform folks know and what the developers know. I know I've been in many situations where I'm like, I already built this full thing for you. Like you can just do this and you'll be good to go. But instead, they hook up, the application developer hooks it up as if they weren't on a platform and they were just connecting their application directly to different services. And I think that's a challenge, one that I didn't originally anticipate because it seemed so obvious to me that these functionalities were available. And it does go back to the documentation, I think, but there's an aspect of like building empathy as well with the teams, and I find that challenging when you're trying to automate the onboarding process to a platform, or just kind of creating the API separation between the platform people and the application. Is how do you make that documentation automatic but still create that empathy where you can communicate? And I don't really have a solution for that yet, but I'd love to see that. I'd love to see some pictures on how to better accomplish that, honestly.
Last question, and then we'll open it up for questions. At the beginning of today, we heard a little bit about like the value chain or the value stream, and it started with data. So what do you feel like is the role of platform as a service in building a bridge to data as a service and all of the data that's needed to feed all of these applications that are being deployed to the platform?
Yeah, so I have a couple of vested interests here. VMware claims to be the Switzerland of the cloud. So when I think of data and when I think of multi-cloud generally, one of the things that always strikes me is the idea that there is data affinity to these clouds, right? One of the clouds has a better image recognition system. One of the clouds has a better translation system. And so you're almost certainly going to be doing that. And I think platforms have to provide a way to sort of give you an abstraction above that, right? You want your application developers to know that like if they can enter the pipeline the same way, it'll land on any of these clouds. But you have to be very, very careful about delivering that kind of outcome without hiding any of the features, right? You picked a platform because it has a feature that none of the other ones do, or one of the clouds because it does something nobody else does. You can very easily fall into a lowest common denominator kind of situation there, at which point you've got the worst of all possible worlds. And so making sure that like data affinity is really a thing, data gravity is really a thing. Your platform has to make sure that you can get access to that data uniformly wherever it is and process it the way you want to.
Oh yeah, platforms need to introduce abstractions at all layers to make all the application data available in some type of way, whether that's through an API gateway or some additional thing that we add on to the platform. I'm pretty entrenched in this. My very first use cases for developing software was to very much catalog and label data. Worked with Maven at JSOC quite a bit, worked with a lot of really smart individuals trying to bring a ton of different sources of data into something that is actually consumable by a human, because there just is so much, and you couldn't possibly do it. And there are these huge teams that are of human brains processing all this stuff, and we know that's not really efficient anymore. Absolutely, platforms, and events when we don't want to introduce abstractions that water down the actual capability. So sometimes it means like maybe we just give them a gateway to get to the thing that is the best, right? And we just give them a pathway to get to it easily, or at least clearly, right? Documentation piece, right? How would you use this with our stuff, etc. I think that's the next evolution really for government stuff is we collect so much data and we do almost nothing with it. Like we're still at the point where like we're talking about just building data warehouses, and we know that's a problem, right? That's already like a thing. We don't want to really do that. We want to get towards like actually ETLing data properly with data pipelines and all this other stuff that's being created now. And like, how do you catch up to that when you don't even collect data the proper way, right? So yeah, it's a very hard problem, but we need to enable that the best we can on the platform side. Through, again, tiny abstractions that ultimately collectively add to a more allowing data to work for us, not against us.
Yeah, I don't think I need to add too much to that. That was exactly what I was going to say was we're collecting all this data. I don't see a lot of visualizations and insights coming from it. So, I mean, I think that's the biggest gap. And not only does it help the organizations, but it even comes back straight to the platform developers themselves to know where to improve. So, yeah, that's a great answer.
Cool. Well, this was great. We didn't get any hot takes, but I think it was a good conversation. We have a couple of minutes left for some questions. Does anyone have any questions for this panel on Platform as a Service? One up here.
Hello. Okay. So is there a lack of capability or a lack of tool or maybe a poor mindset that you have seen be the downfall of a new or a good platform team?
I can start with that one while you guys think.
Please. Yeah.
I think that a downfall, I like to joke of it as like accidental waterfall. I think a lot of times what happens, you know, we see this concept a little more well defined with like MVPs in software development. But a lot of times there's this competing idea in the platform world of you're developing a platform, you want to release an MVP that goes out there, but at the same time you want to make sure that you're not releasing something that isn't functional. And a lot of times there's this like scope creep that happens, and you'll keep tacking on more and more things onto the platform before you can consider it ready. And I think that can really take down a platform team. And honestly, if your organization's relying on that to deliver software, the organization as a whole.
Oh, for me, it is not being specific and clear about what the next feature is. We have so much input from so many different organizations, especially in the government, from security. There's so many things that we have to worry about as the platform team. To deliver, you know, Gene had a huge list of things that he doesn't want to care about anymore, right? And in the absence of him not caring about those things, you know, the PaaS has to handle all of that, right? So with that said, like, you have to have an extreme focus on what you're going to solve, right? I think the downfall of many platform teams is that they try to solve the world, and you'll get nowhere doing that, right? And it ends up as a bad experience. And it's like, you wanting the world is not realistic, right? And we just have to communicate that more clearly and, you know, have a more balanced team effort into prioritizing backlogs and stuff like that. And I think that's one of the root issues with some platform teams failing.
Yeah, just to reiterate those same 2 points, I think it's really important for platform teams to realize that once you get a steel thread MVP in place, that you prove that you can do the things you need to do, it's important to go to scale almost instantly. Long before you add whatever the next feature is, because that'll be the next thing that fails for you. Once you've got that sort of inertia, once you've got the flywheel going, because you have so many customers and they're happy with what you've done, they're starting to provide you better feedback about, oh, here's the next feature I want. They're also starting to advocate for you elsewhere in the organization, say, hey, these people could do better by me if only you gave them more money, more headcount, more things like that.
Cool. Any other questions?
Back there.
Sort of curious about the line of demarcation. When is something inside the platform domain, and then when is it outside? I've experienced things like secrets management, and then stuff like Prometheus or Grafana, your time series data. You can run, especially within the government platforms, have been able to run applications but not really operate them because you don't have access to secrets management or time series data to see how the JVM's consuming memory over time. Does that fall within the purview of the platform, or is that some other domain? Thank you.
I'm going to launch on this one. So I started my career 22, 23 years ago now as the first person over working on the Spring team after the original founders. I have followed it my entire career, being core member, and for many, many years I thought, you know what, we can just do this inside of the JVM. But my new role as technical lead for the platform reminds me that, no, there are other programming languages out there, and they all want these exact same features, right? And so my take here is that all of these kinds of features start as an application domain and then eventually migrate to the platform. Once they've been proven as really, really valuable, you want your platform to do it not only for you, but for the people who use your language, but the people who use all the languages and get it, right? Like, why wouldn't you want just metrics gathering for everybody? Why wouldn't you want secrets management for everybody? You have to prove the point somehow, and then it evolves.
Yeah, definitely echo on that. Everything eventually becomes platform-wide, but you must start specifically. There's no way to just... Again, speaking back to the platform team problem, people try to rush to what people have already implemented before, and it's just too much, right? So the line of demarcation is like moving further and further. Our value is the value that you deliver to your customers, right? So ultimately, whatever we can do for you to make your job easier is our value, ultimately, right? So whatever that may be, we'll add it to the platform.
Yeah, I think the role of the platform developer is growing at an exponential pace. And yeah, it's a great question because I don't know the answer to it. I feel like it could be anywhere and everywhere. So yeah, I also love to hear these guys answer because I really don't know.
I mean, a good rule of thumb is it business value? Probably. If it's not, it probably should be in the platform.
Absolutely. Okay. We've got a few seconds left. I want to thank you guys for participating and giving great answers, and thank you guys for asking great questions. And I hope you guys enjoyed this panel.